heard right here. Rangers lose a tough one. They were up 6-2 after 5, and they wind up losing 7-6 to the Mets, who, I mean, they can't lose right now. Was it Grimace? Is that what it was?
Yeah, Grimace. 7 in a row since Grimace threw out the first pitch.
And the Rangers have lost 5 in a row. We're joined now by Odyssey MLB insider Bret Boone. Insider Call is presented by Grainger with supplies and solutions for every industry. Grainger is the right product for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Bret is also the host of the Bret Boone podcast, featuring the most notable names in MLB and around sports every week. Morning, Bret. How we doing?
I'm doing good, guys. What's happening?
Not
your Rangers.
No, not the Rangers. We will. That is. Look, when do you decide on a team? Like, when's too late for a team to really make a run? I mean, I guess with 10 games back, there's still 80 games to play, more than that, 90. When is too late?
Well, in today's game, there's a lot more leeway. You have a lot longer leash because of the format and the way it's set up. You know, there's six spots at the table in each league, so you have more time. And I think recent history has proven that winning the division isn't even close to as important as it used to be. You know, the way to the World Series seems to, you have just as good a chance of going through the wild card bracket as you do winning the division. So at this stage of the game, I think in Texas, because of how great it went a year ago, you know, I was just going over the offensive numbers, and I mean, there were one in every category in 2023. It's a new year. They've been banged up. A lot of their starting rotation, the obvious guys at the top are a Scherzer and a DeGrom that have been out all season. But I'll tell you that the pitching, for the most part, for what you've got, bringing Lorenzen in, he's really done a great job and kind of stopped the bleeding until you get the big boys back. You know, Sports, he's been out. The young kid, Young has missed a lot of time. I hear he's on the mend. Carter had that unbelievable run down the stretch last year. He hasn't been the same player. He's missed a lot of time. So you've been banged up a lot. So yeah, you do have that in your back pocket as an excuse. But I'll tell you, I'm looking at it. I'm looking at that division. I've been talking about it all year, how dominant that Seattle Mariners starting rotation is, and they're starting to show it. They're starting to pull away from the pack in the West. So I think as far as the West, you're never done. You got 90 games left. That's a lot of games. But I would say at this point, with the Mariners, that starting rotation, I think they're going to win the division this year. Texas trying to grab a wild card. We'll see. Long way to go, but they're definitely behind the 8 ball right now.
Bret, if things continue to trend in this direction for Texas, which, 11-23 over the last month plus, if they continue to play poorly and start falling out of favor, at what point do you start looking at, hey, maybe there's some veterans that would be attractive that we can deal at the deadline? I mean, would that be a guy potentially like Lorenzen, who we just talked about, or
Sure.
Would somebody like Evaldi potentially be involved in that? Would that be somebody who you think teams would say, hey, that's an attractive veteran starting pitcher we can add at the deadline? We'll give up something decent for Evaldi.
I think without a doubt, and without actually being in those meetings, in the inner workings of the Texas Rangers, you'll never know on what they're thinking long term. But I think, that coming off a World Series, an unbelievable run, the way the season's going thus far, if it continues to trend in this way, I think definitely that's going to be one of the Rangers' options to build up and get some more young players in return. That being said, I think right now you're not at that point yet. I think if we're sitting here a month from now, you really got to start considering that. The thing that Major League Baseball has done that I really like, because it's added more strategy to the game, is they put that trading deadline out 2 months instead of 1. So it's not that easy slam dunk, hey, we know we're out of it, or no, we're going for it. It's kind of makes you make that decision at that place where, well, are we going to win or are we not going to win? I think it really adds a strategic element to it, and makes guys in the front office either come out smelling like a rose or, wow, what a bad move. But nevertheless, I think it adds excitement to the game. So I think we got a little more time. Let's get to the All-Star break, figure out if this team turns it around. Right now, obviously, they've lost 5 straight. You mentioned at the top, they're playing a really hot Mets team that's won 7 in a row. And I think like 14 out of their last 18, something like that. But the Mets, nevertheless, have been hot. So that's the way baseball goes. It ebbs and it flows. Right now, these guys aren't ebbing.
No, they're not. And then I think, two things. One, you've got all these guys coming back, but also the other problem that they're going to run into is, with Seattle's pitching being so good, that's not the team that you overcome a big deficit on with the pitching. If they were an offense first team and they didn't have any pitching, maybe you go to a slump. With those guys, I just don't know how they blow a 10-game lead. It's happened, but I don't know.
I'll tell you, their bullpen's decent. They're going to trend towards the upper part of the American League, not the lower. But you hit it on the head. Seattle's a real mediocre offensive team. I think this year they kind of found a nose for the finish line. That's what I'm kind of coining it. It's not the greatest offensive team, but they have that confidence. They've come back. They've walked teams off quite a few times. So once you do that as a player, as a team, you kind of look at each other late when it's close and go, we're going to come back and win this one, right? And it's a matter of confidence. So I think Seattle has that. But you're right. That starting rotation, they've got a number one in every position. It's just because you get to Woo in the 5 spot, he can be a bona fide number one at any time. So it's going to be tough in that division to overcome it. I think Seattle's got the best, not only the best pitching in that division or in the American League, I think top to bottom, starting rotation only. Let me keep it to rotation. Seattle's got the best pitching in all of the game, and that includes Yankees, Dodgers, Phillies, who are the juggernauts right now.
Insider Call is brought to you by Grainger. For the ones who get it done, Grainger offers professional-grade supplies and solutions made for every industry, backed by product experts. Call, click, Grainger.com, or just stop by. We're talking to Bret Boone, Odyssey Baseball Insider.
Okay, so Bret, we actually were discussing a basketball topic yesterday, and when we were talking about it, something came up that we're like, we need to ask Bret Boone for his thought about this tomorrow. So,
without a doubt, I'm a hoop expert.
So the big storyline in the NBA Finals was Kyrie Irving going back to Boston, a place where he is just public enemy number one. And we were trying to wonder, how much did that affect him? And what other examples do we have of this existing? And the one in Dallas that we came up with was A-Rod returning to Seattle in 2001 and going back to Safeco for the first time, being there in front of those fans and that, hostility. And I just remember the boos were loud and intense, and we were trying to figure out recollection of that. Do you remember what that atmosphere was like that first game back that A-Rod showed back up in Seattle? And did you guys have any sense like, man, this feels like it's maybe getting to him a little bit, like he senses it, he feels it, he hears it?
I felt quite the contrary. It almost fuels you, like I'm that important, I'm that big of a deal, I'm that good that you've got to boo me this hard. Wow, that as a player, that's a puff your chest out moment versus a go hide in the corner. I think a Barry Bonds type figure in my game experienced that the most of his career, definitely the latter part of his career. I think you watch Altuve placed, and I have a different opinion on Altuve. I think it's unwarranted. I don't think the Houston thing to me is not a big a deal as everybody made it, but that doesn't matter. But Altuve, to a degree, hears that when he goes everywhere because of the trash can scandal. But I think it's quite the contrary for most athletes. Now, I'll say that with a caveat. I think it's up to the individual, what you're made of, what's inside. Each individual is going to act differently. But from an A-Rod perspective, I thought it was more of I don't know, he was booed so hard that it almost felt like, well, kind of the Reggie Jackson thing is they don't boo nobodies. Mm-hmm. So I'm a pretty damn big deal. You're going to boo me you care this much that you're going to come out just to boo me. I think it's more of that a boy, you're pretty damn special and you're a big deal versus, oh, we hate you and oh, I'm not going to play good because of it. So that's my interpretation from what I've seen through my life on the Major League Baseball field. Those guys that get booed hard and everywhere they go, it's more of a you're just adding fuel to the fire, and they're going to be even better player the louder you boo.
Bret, wanted to get your take on the passing of Willie Mays. I know you're a huge baseball lifer, but you also come from a baseball family that no doubt has had stories from Willie and
Sure.
just the tremendous player that he was.
I think Willie transcends he's one of those guys that transcends the game. He was so big. He's so part of the culture of Major League Baseball. When you think of baseball, you close your eyes, it's a Babe Ruth, of course, that comes to mind. The Mantle, the Maris, the Lou Gehrigs, but Willie's in that conversation. So he transcends the game. He's more of an icon than just a great Major League Baseball player. I've heard the stories. I've had interactions with Willie through the years, and it's more of you roll into San Francisco, he's on the field, maybe a handshake, maybe a hello. I didn't get to know him very well, but I hear the stories, from my grandpa, who's got mostly American League stories because he was in the American League his whole career. But he mentioned when you talk about the all-time greats, of course, he wanted to talk about Bob Feller and how Bret, he's better than Randy Johnson, and how Ted Williams is the greatest hitter of all time. But when it came to Willie, he just kind of look at you and his eyes would bug out, go, you talk about a really good player. So, today's it's a sad day for a lot of people, but at the same time, life goes on. We lost one of the all-time greats. And baseball feels that you're hearing that story put everywhere right now, and it should be one of the all-time greats for me. Definitely a top 5 player, maybe a top 3 player in the history of the game. So here's a guy that hit 600 plus home runs and ran it down in center field like Andrew Jones. So a guy that I can kind of look at, that I played with, and kind of have a feeling what Willie Mays was in his time. So pretty awesome. I had a feeling the other day because they got this big game going on, I think tomorrow at Rickett. Yeah. Is it Rickett?
Rickwood. Yeah, Rickwood.
Rickwood, where Willie played as a young player. He played in that field, and it was going to kind of be a tribute to the Negro Leagues, but Willie Mays was going to be the focal point. I saw on the ticker the other day, it said Willie Mays will not attend the game, and I thought, ooh, if he's not attending that game, something's going on. And sure enough, he passed yesterday. Sad day, but also a day to celebrate one of the greats.
Hey, Bret, we really appreciate it. We'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
You got it, guys. Thank you.
Bret Boone. That was Odyssey MLB insider Bret Boone. Insider calls presented by Grainger, with supplies and solutions for every industry. Grainger has the right product for you. Call, click, Grainger.com, or just stop on by.